Well, Jacob, here we are. Welcome, everybody. This is track 11. As you can see, these are not the familiar faces this time around. I'm welcomed here by the medical guy and the analyst. We are the contributors of the TRAK pod. And Jared and Hunter are out this time. So they gave us full reign of TRAK pod. That might have been a big mistake on their end. Jacob, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. Finally got a day off of practice. Got to get home around 3 o'clock, get some notes going, getting ready for the pod. And just want to let everybody out there know, like, if it seems like there's more intellectual information being put out in this podcast, it's because there is. And
That's right.
it's because the two people that are on right now. So
That's
get
right.
ready.
Yeah, it's going to be a way more interesting podcast than usual, and that's no offense to the Rook and the Kid, but we got to take our own reins sometimes. So,
Yeah,
well,
and
I'm going to go ahead. Oh, go ahead. I'm gonna let you fill on that as well.
at the same time, we also don't have to see we don't have to see the little kid haircut as well. Like, I mean, comb your hair, do something, throw some water, put a hat on, anything. But
Yeah, he's got a big head, man.
we got to see the little 5, 6 year old buzz cut that we all had for the first 18 years of our life. So at least we
Right.
don't have to see that.
Yeah, man, it's something wild. I can't believe they keep letting him on here. Need to go through some layoffs or something.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, welcome everybody. We're going to go give you a quick rundown of the order of events that we're going to run through. So I think the first thing we'll go through is the wild AL West and what's going on there in terms of baseball. And then we're going to go through our TRAK rankings. Me and Jacob are going to go over our best college football games that we've enjoyed through the past couple years as college football is right around the corner. And then, as always, we're going to roll right into the Dallas Cowboys, talk about their preseason game 3, the trade that everybody is talking about, Trey Lance to the Cowboys, and how the 49ers gave up on him. Me and Jacob have a lot to say about that one. And then we're going to go through our Mamas Don't Let Your Cowboys. And then next we'll go with the TRAK insights, or as me and Jacob like to call it, the 2-minute drill. And then we'll talk a little bit about college football, the realignment, and just some interesting ways on how that's going to affect college football. And then, of course, we'll end with our TRAK record of the week. So for starters, we'll roll right into it. We'll go straight into the wild AL West and the AL West race that is currently going on. So I'll set the stage for Jacob here. Currently in the AL West, we've got the Seattle Mariners, 75-56, holding a one-game lead above both the Astros and the Rangers. And then Los Angeles Angels are 12.5 back, so you can kind of count them out. And then nobody wants to talk about the Oakland Athletics. They're already eliminated from the playoffs and have basically sold their team to the Devils. So we'll go ahead and let Jacob start us off here. Jacob, what are your thoughts on how this is going to play out come October playoff baseball?
Well, man, it's gonna be crazy. Okay, so I'll just you went through with the different records that they have right now. The top 3 teams have about a game to a game and a half separating each other. Just want to go through and just talk about uh, what Seattle's done since the All-Star break. Okay, they're one of I think they're the top team since the All-Star break, unless it's the Dodgers, which that could change every other day. I also want to say that Texas they held until a couple days ago, they held first place in this division since April 8th. Okay. At one point, they had a 10-game lead in first place, or 8-game lead over Houston. And then just seeing how that's just slipped away. I know we've talked about in off script and whatnot in the Twitter group, that the Rangers' biggest glaring problem, right, has been their bullpen, and their bullpen has blown more saves than they've converted. And so just a stat like that is nuts to me. And then obviously Houston, they've kind of why this is such a big topic is because the last 5, 7 years, I mean, the AL West outside of 2020 has kind of been their division, right? The last few years, you get into the month of September and they're up by 7 to 10 games or whatever. And so there's not much of a fight. But just going over their schedules and showing why this is going to be so crazy is one, all three teams are good, which is nice. Seattle, their last 9 games of the season are all between Texas and Houston. So the last week and a half of the season is just Texas and Houston. Okay. And in the month of September, they play the New York Mets, who have sucked and underperformed this year, but they still have a good lineup. Cincinnati, who has a young team that can mess around and beat you. Tampa Bay, who's one of the best teams in the MLB this year. And the Dodgers, who second to them or first to them, have been the best since the All-Star break. Then we have Texas. Their September includes Minnesota, Houston, Toronto, Cleveland, Boston, and Seattle. So their gauntlet of a last month starts here in a couple days. And with that bullpen kind of being on the mends, they've got to absolutely depend on scoring, 6+ runs a game. And so that gets tough down in the dog days of August and September. And then Houston in September, they play the Yankees, who haven't been as good this year, but it's New York versus Houston. That's always a battle. They play Texas, San Diego Padres, Baltimore, who's a top team, Seattle, who's obviously good, and then, Arizona, who has a bunch of young people over there, and for the first half of the season was very good. Now, the thing about Houston is they're getting everybody back. They got Alvarez back. They got Abreu back. They got Altuve back. Pena's starting to catch stride. Brantley got in the lineup today. So it just looks like, it looks like it's probably going to come down to all three, but Houston getting healthy helps them out so much, so much. And so it's just going to be interesting. And it's just nice that this division isn't wrapped up in, September 1st. And then just a couple other numbers to throw out there. As of August 13th, Texas was up 7 games on the Mariners and 3 games on the Astros. And it is August 29th. And so there has been a 8 or 9 game flip in 16 days. So for that big of a flip in the season, that's nuts. And there's about 30 games left in the season. And then to add on top of the AL West race, the AL wild card race. So they take the top 3 teams this year is right now Texas, Houston, Seattle, Baltimore, Boston, Toronto, and Tampa Bay are all within a couple of games of each other for those top 3 spots. So it's just you can win the division, great, obviously, but that wild card team right there is still going to be a super great team because all of those teams I just named are coming out of 2 separate divisions, the AL West and the AL East, and so it's just going to be the odd man out when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think you summed that up pretty good. Just sitting here looking at the standings, I mean, just like you said, the last 10 games, Seattle's 9-1. And then you've got Texas, who's 2-8 in the last 2 games. That's where that 9-game flip comes from. I mean, that's just a wild stat in itself,
Yeah.
Usually, like you said, the Astros in the last 2 or 3, even 5 years, I mean, this division is done, wrapped up in September where they can just kind of coast and just ride into the playoffs healthy. And I think that's the story of the year for the Astros is, you're missing Brantley, you're missing Alvarez, you're missing Altuve for an extended amount of time, and that really hurts. And then to build off of what you said about the Rangers, I mean, they were one of the best hitting teams that I saw up into the All-Star break. And, if they don't have the pitching, I feel like pitching is what has won the Astros a lot of games in the playoffs. I mean, Verlander, he's been off and on in the playoffs, as we've all known. But, like Kramer Valdez and those guys are guys that win you games. And so, I mean, and you see that at the trade deadline with the Rangers and the Astros. The Astros go out to get Verlander, Rangers go out and get Scherzer. I mean, they know to go deep in the playoffs and to win playoff games, you got to have somebody, and usually it's the starters that get you to 7 innings because you got to have that bullpen, ready to go.
Yeah.
So I mean, I totally agree with that. That it's by no means wrapped up, and not only wrapped up in the AL West, it's not wrapped up anywhere in the wild card. I mean, that is going to be an absolute dogfight in those last 30 games just to make it into even the wild card if you don't win your division. So
Absolutely.
That's where I think it's going to come down to the wire. But the one thing I want to ask you, and one of the things that I think is very important going forward is like, what's going to get the Astros over the hump to win either that division or just get them in the wild card?
Yeah, right now it's got to be starting pitching. For about the past 2 weeks, the starting pitching outside of a couple of starts here and there hasn't been very good. And that starts with, and I'm not obviously not blaming only, outside of Framber Valdez's no hitter that he threw since the All Star break, he's carried like a 6.5 ERA. And Verlander is, still kind of catching his stride with the Stros, and Christian Javier has just been it's been a big setback this year because last year he had some of the craziest K per nine stats and ERA for a pitcher in all of baseball last year, and he's almost at a 5 ERA. And then luckily they've brought up this JP France guy who has kind of found his stride here. And he's actually throwing a pretty good game tonight. But the bullpen has been just about as solid as they could be the second half. The hitters are getting healthy and stringing some big games here of late together. It's just, I think our past outside of tonight, the last 10 games, I think we've had one starter go more than 5 innings. And so that puts a tax on a bullpen, especially in these days where you start playing these really good teams and playing these teams that like you need those crucial outs at the end, and you don't necessarily need to be not wasting, but using those crucial outs in the fifth or sixth inning.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's like, it kind of goes back to what I just said. That's what went, like, the bullpen, I feel like late in the season is just as crucial as your starters.
Yeah.
So I'll flip the coin on you now. What's going to get the Rangers the high edge here on the Astros or the Mariners?
The Rangers bats and the Rangers starters have been really good. I mean, like I threw that stat out there, their bullpen has just been an atrocity. And it's not like I'm not questioning anybody's character or anything like that, but when you have 50 save opportunities and more than half of them you blow, and you're still like, just think if you half that number, like how much of a lead they would have on the division right now. And so that's nuts. And it doesn't seem like the bullpen's getting any better. So, they're gonna have to just pummel people to win. And so their lineup is pretty scary. I mean, they've got, the Simeons, the Seegers, the Lowe's, the Tavares guys coming around, the Garcias, like they just have dudes all the way up, and that Jonah Heim's back and he's still hitting. Like, I mean, there's not really an easy out. And so their hitting is going to win them games. So if they could figure out even just to be okay in the bullpen, that's what's going to get them over Seattle or Houston.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think the one thing that, I think the one knock going back to the Astros here that's really been bothering me is, from what I've seen, they need to make a decision on Diaz and Maldonado. And then at what point can you keep Maldonado in the game? So, I mean, I just pulled up some stats yesterday, and here's something crazy. One, Diaz and Maldonado have almost the exact same at bats. So Diaz has 296 at bats, Maldonado has 295. Their averages are completely skewed. They're completely different. Maldonado's batting 183 and Diaz is batting 284. At what point can you keep Maldonado back there catching balls and calling games and make it an argument that that's the right move as a manager? I like at this point, I feel like Diaz calls just good game, or like I've seen stats on his frame rate, and when he's back there, the different outcomes of games for the Astros. I mean, if you're coming down to the crunch and you've been having struggles having your best players on the field, like why wouldn't you create the best lineup? At what point is Mahler going to do anything for you? I mean, that's insanity to keep somebody on the field that's batting 183. I don't understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. I 1000% agree with you. And even if you look at the defensive metrics, that's what Maldi has been talked about being in there for, and this is a career worst for defensive metrics for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really is just tough, not to have your best people out there, especially when it's such a glaring difference on the offensive side. If it'd be one thing if he was batting, a little bit better, like if he was hitting 210 compared to 180. Like, okay, we get it. But I mean, the dude, I mean, if any of our audience were to go look up just stats for rookie of the year, right? Go look up stats for rookie of the year. And Yainer Diaz, in his limited amount of time, his stats are just as good, if not better, than the Rutschmans or the Hendersons or the Corbin Carrolls or anything like that. And it just doesn't get recognized and whatnot. But yeah, I agree with you. It's when it comes down to the nut cutting time, like you got to put your best people out there, regardless if someone wants a personal catcher or whatever. It's like you want a personal catcher that goes 0 for 4, or you want someone other catcher that catches you just as well and goes 2 for 4 and has a bomb. Like
it gives you some cushion on the scoreboard every week. Like I'm sitting here. I'll go even more in depth. Diaz has half the strikeouts than Maldonado. He has almost 10 more home runs. He has almost double the RBIs. I mean, it's just stupid.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's all I really got on the Stros. And then to give some statistical analysis to Jacob on the saves for the Rangers. I mean, the run differential for the Rangers is crazy. Yeah. The Astros are plus 96, and the Rangers are plus 173. So they're almost doubling the Astros run differential. The only difference there is the saves. I mean, that's why you're sitting there at 74 and 57, and the Astros are 75 and 58, is because you can't seem to close the game, even when they're hitting the crap out of the ball. So I think to wrap up our talk on my end, I think this is going to be a really close race. But I think the Astros, personally, because I'm an Astros fan, are in a good spot just because they're getting all their guys back. And if Dusty Baker finally comes to the conclusion that Diaz is this guy, then, they'll be in a better spot. I mean, you got any wrapping up comments for that?
No, I 100% agree with you. Everybody's getting healthy. Put your best guys out there and just let them go.
Mm-hmm. And it's not like they're going to need, time to learn how to play together. I mean, these are the same guys from last year. I mean, they've probably played 180, 200 plus games together, and a lot of these guys have. I mean, Bregman, Tucker, Alvarez, and Altuve. I mean, they've all played games together for a long time. They've been in the heat of the playoffs. So I feel like, it's not going to be something where it's out of the ordinary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, I think that's going to wrap up our wild AL West. As we said earlier, I think everything we just said falls right in line with that. So now we'll go right into our TRAK rankings of the week, and this one is going to be a lot of fun. Let me do this for Jared. He asked me to do this. This was the one thing he asked me to do, and I guess I will. So. Bam. TRAK rankings best college football games. TTR is the only one that can produce.
Yeah, it's not that hard. We can click buttons too, man. Like, come on now.
Yep. All righty. So, of course, as always, it goes gold, diamond, platinum. I'm going to start from the bottom. Me and Jacob will share our golds, then we'll go into our platinums, then we'll go into our diamonds. So, Jacob, I will give you the honors of going first.
So first one that I picked, so our gold ranking, giving y'all a shout out over there at A&M with the Aggies. 2019 Texas A&M Aggies versus LSU, 7 overtime, 74-72 victory. I remember sitting in my camper at the lease, was watching the game on my phone, about to go to sleep, and then I get a notification that like, oh, so and so scored, and it was like 54 to whatever. And I was like, how is this game still going on? And then just watching, what was it? It was Joe Burrow in 2019, I believe. Is he 18 or 19? And Kellen Mond of all people. And Kellen Mond was actually the quarterback that threw for 6 touchdowns, and Joe Burrow ran for like 4 and 200 yards. So I think that's probably one of my favorite, just weird highlight reel, just kind of opposite of what those quarterbacks are kind of game, and it was just cool to see, especially since they were ranked 16 and A&M was ranked 16th at the time, LSU was 6th. So that's just kind of a big game, cool game, SEC environment game. So that's my gold.
That's a good gold. I won't say that one of my picks was also that one, but it may be. So
Yeah.
for me, the gold is the Ohio State versus Alabama game, the 2015 Sugar Bowl. So for those of you that don't remember that one, that was what is known as the Zeke game, and it's crazy as much negativity I've been giving to Zeke on this podcast. This is the one thing that I remember that was like, holy hell, this guy is going to be an absolute beast in the NFL, and he was for a couple of years. So just to give you a couple stats in this game, uh, Zeke had 20 carries, 230 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
That's
And
a
I
solid
seem
game.
to have left the score off of here. Yeah, but the Ohio State won 42-35. They actually went on a 28-0 run to catch up to Bama, and then ended up uh, outing them in the game. So big names in this game were Derrick Henry, that's a very familiar name, Zeke, Cardell Jones, who actually, this was his second start, and he filled in this game for J.T. Barrett. And if you remember, this was the whole Braxton Miller, J.T. Barrett, Cardell Jones era, where Braxton Miller was an absolute dog for Ohio State, and then he did something to his shoulder, couldn't throw the ball anymore, and they moved him to receiver. And
Yeah,
then J.T. Barrett.
wasn't Cardell Jones's nickname like 12 gauge or something? And he was the one
Yeah,
that said like, I didn't come here to play school or something like that.
yep,
There
yep.
we go.
So other big names in this game were Michael Thomas, Amari Cooper, and T.J. Yeldon. So a lot
Jeez.
of big NFL stars in that game. And it's funny is the quarterback for Bama, I don't even remember.
Was
His
it?
name Daniel Sims, I think. Like I don't even remember who that is.
Yeah, not a clue.
Yeah. Here, let me double check that. His name was Blake Sims. I'm like,
Blake.
I've never heard of this guy.
Yeah, not a clue.
So
Not
that
a
is
clue.
my goal. And I'll let you start us off on platinum.
So my platinum, this one's a little older, I guess. And not too old. I'm not gonna be like, oh, the Battle of 1914. But this was Arkansas versus Ole Miss. Okay, I think this was in 2002. Okay, it was another 7 overtime game called Seventh Heaven. It was a 58-56 game. Okay, and Arkansas at the time was 4-3. Ole Miss was 6-1, and it was before. This was before the overtime rules got changed in college, so it really took a long time and whatnot, and just I can't remember who Eli Manning was the quarterback for Ole Miss. That's how long ago it was. And
Man,
he missed a 2-point conversion throw to tie it up, and that's how they lost. So being obviously a little bit of an Arkansas fan because of Gramps and all that, that one I guess showing my age, I remember borrowing it from Gramps on VHS tape and watching it on like a 19-inch screen, big ass
Wow.
box TV with a VCR on it and watching it for like 5 hours.
That's Gramps to a T is recording like an Arkansas staple game.
Yeah,
That's
well,
hilarious.
what's nuts is he didn't record it. He bought like the VHS tape, and it had like Seventh Heaven cover that it went in, like the old slide-in covers and whatnot. So
Yeah,
I just remember that. I can't remember who the quarterback for Arkansas was, but it was like it was an older game and whatnot, but it was nuts watching it when I was a little kid.
that's funny. I was gonna say that's probably before the Darren McFadden days too, right? He was like 05, 06, or
Yeah,
7.
it was right before the Darren McFadden days.
Yeah, that's a good game. My platinum is actually Jacob's Gold. So Texas A&M LSU, 74-72, 7 overtimes. I remember I was with my parents watching this game, and I came home from doing something, and I was watching the end of the game, and just to give everybody kind of a recap of what happened, it was a controversial regular time ending. Kellen Mond connected on like the last play of the fourth quarter. They're running up, spike, 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 get up there, 3, 2, 1, snap the ball and spike it. Well, LSU and Ed Orgeron thought that clock ran out, so they reviewed it. They got 1 second on the clock. A&M got to run one more play and they scored, and that's how the 7 overtime started. So I would say this game is the whole reason that college football uh, changed changed all of their OT rules to where they force teams, I think after 3 overtime,
Two.
start going for two overtime,
Yeah.
start going for 2 points, which I think is cool, but it's going
Yeah.
to take away from crazy games like this.
Yeah.
One last thing I'll add is this is, as Jacob stated earlier, this is the Joe Burrow LSU team before the Joe Burrow LSU.
Yeah.
So, the next year they came in and absolutely spanked A&M. So
Yeah.
they got their revenge for it.
Yeah. When I was looking up the stats to those games, like I was just like, oh, Joe Burrow is gonna have like he had a lot of touchdowns, obviously. But I want to say his stats was like 21 rushes for like 200 yards and 4 TDs. Like that was Joe Burrow's stats. And then
Mm-hmm.
Kellen Mond was like, I mean, Kellen Mond was probably 35 for 70, but he threw for like 5 TDs. And so it's just
Yeah,
funny seeing where they're at now. It's like you would have never thought Joe Burrow would have been out of those two running in touchdowns.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm a big hater of Kellen Mond. He's pretty crappy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, diamond ranking, Jacob. What you got?
All right, you're gonna hate this one, but my diamond ranking is 2006.
Oh my
Texas
God.
versus USC Rose Bowl, 41-38. And you want to talk about some names? We got Vince Young going against freaking Matt Leinart. Okay, Reggie Bush and Lindell White on the same side. And I looked up the stats to those games, and Matt Leinart had his obvious, like 360, like 2 touchdowns. The biggest sleeper in there is Lindell White had like 21 carries for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Reggie Bush had like 10 or 15 carries for like 110, but he had 5 catches for like 98 yards. And then funny enough, 41-38 game, Vince Young had 0 passing TDs. Every
No,
TD he scored was rushing. And so I just remember watching that with all my buddies growing up and just watching like just so many stars like showing out. Like it wasn't
yeah,
just like one-sided. Like Vince Young was the dude, could run and throw. That's what he did. Leinart could sit there and sling it. Boom. Reggie Bush, that was the infamous, 7-yard front flip into the end zone. That little run like there. So it was just super cool, and it was a pretty cool topic to just think about. And 2006, a lot younger when you were a kid. It was just cool looking back on those games and whatnot.
Well, I guess we can talk about this one together because that was my diamond ranking.
No
The reason
shot.
yeah, the reason I picked that one is also because of what you just named. I mean, so many big names in that game. I mean, especially being down here in Texas, like, I'm in oil and gas, and a lot of guys are UT grads. I mean, you walk into one out of those 5 offices, everybody's going to have that picture of Vince Young running into the end zone for the win. And that's one of the things that I wrote down today is it's still talked about today. It's still one of the biggest pictures on the wall. That's why everybody cares about UT is because that was the glory days of Mac Brown.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were just a powerhouse. So you took all my notes. Reggie Bush was like almost a non-factor in the game, rushing wise. Like Lindell White took over, and Jamal Charles wasn't like
Yeah. Those
very
are
much
just
involved.
yeah. And what's nuts is like we didn't compare notes. We didn't look at each other's stuff. Nothing. I for
No,
sure. I was like Ryan's gonna have A&M LSU game because that's just a nuts game. I had no
yeah.
shot. I was like no shot. He puts the Texas game on there. So that's pretty
Hey,
cool.
I know I'm an Aggie by family, but you got to respect game or respect game's game. So
Absolutely, man.
that
No
was
doubt.
a crazy game. I mean, like that's a little bit before my time of like being able to fully remember games, and that game is still, like I said, it's still talked about. People still pull it up on YouTube and watch it. It was just such a crazy game, and the best part about it, it was played at the Rose Bowl, so that made it even
Yeah.
more iconic.
Yeah. Just an all around just game.
Yeah, I mean, there was so many different crazy plays that happened in that game too.
Oh yeah.
All right, well, that's going to conclude our TRAK rankings. Even though there wasn't much of a difference there, you caught 2 games that I think a lot of people would put on that list in recent memory, especially in the 2000s.
Yeah,
So
I figured you might have gone since you're SEC would have gone with the Iron Bowl, the Auburn Alabama one where the kick was returned. They tried
kick
that
six.
60, yeah, the kick six.
Yep.
I figured that might have been one. But yeah, there's a bunch of games out there. That's crazy that we ended up with 2 out of the 3.
Yeah, there's a couple that I almost put in there. Kick six was one. That Alabama Oklahoma game a couple years ago,
Mhm.
where what's his name? I just lost it. Trevor Knight was the quarterback, and they
Yeah.
won. They
Yeah.
beat Bama. The other one that I almost put in there was the Ohio State or the Michigan Appalachian State game in
Oh,
2007,
yeah.
where Appalachian State went into Michigan and beat them.
Yeah.
It's not like comparable to like Appalachian State A&M. Like Michigan was supposed to be one of the top teams that year. It's not like A&M that can be disappointing at times. So,
Yeah.
and I'm willing to admit that because I don't have an Aggie ring on my finger. So,
There we go. There we go.
all right. So now we'll move right into that to, of course, Dallas Cowboy news. Always talking Cowboys, or as I like to call it, that's one of Jared's banners. I'll give you one of mine. Talking Cowboys.
There we go.
So all teams just wrapped up preseason game 3. Dallas looked great in game 3. And just to build off of what Jared said last podcast, the road, it's that's what preseason's about. It's kind of working on your craft, getting things together, seeing who's going to make the roster, and we'll get into that too. They had a bunch of roster cuts today, and that's very unfortunate for a lot of guys. One thing I'd like to point out is, we all get excited about the season starting, but there's a lot of guys that are getting some upsetting phone calls today, and that's always tough. So, but wrapping up or going into preseason game 3, a couple notes I had. Strong offensive outing, and I like to say that because Dak was the OC for the game. But it was a lot of fun to watch him call a game. And I think that was kind of the highlight of preseason game 3 was Dak calling the game and then them giving Will Greer a chance um, to basically showcase what he's got because of what Dallas just went through with the Trey Lance trade. You got to get the roster down to 53, and doing that, you're only going to keep 2 or 3 quarterbacks. So, with adding Trey Lance and having Cooper Rush, Dak, and Will Greer now, you got to get rid of one of them. So, Jacob, what were your thoughts on preseason game 3?
Yeah, similar to you, very similar to you. I wrote down Will Greer and then the Lepke guy, the running back. I thought he really showed out, showed what he could do. And, he's kind of, it reminds me of, the longest yard thing, that's how White man runs a football kind of thing. Like that's what he
Yeah.
kind of looks like is he just kind of runs over people. But there's a lot of tape that was out where his feet were quick, his feet were in the right place, and he had a couple nice catches, and so it showed that hey, he really looked like 2 years ago Zeke, where when you needed 2 yards, 2 yards was automatic. But he also showed where hey, I can catch a ball, I can run out here and make somebody miss, kind of thing. So that was cool to
Mhm.
see. The Will Greer thing, I'm kind of on two sides of the coin. I think it kind of sucks that you basically bring in a quarterback and you're like, hey man, we're gonna keep you for about 7 more hours and then we're getting
Yeah.
rid of your ass. But we're gonna
Go
let you
out
play.
there and prove yourself. It's like,
Yeah, prove
okay.
yourself. Not for us, for somebody else.
Yeah.
But then he goes out there and has some type of Madden game. And like, I mean, if anything, if for anybody, you know, Cooper Rush was probably sitting there like, "Oh, thank God they brought in Trey Lance." Like because Will Greer, I mean, he looked impressive and he looked like, somebody out there with absolutely nothing to lose, and I can't imagine him not being a backup somewhere for, league minimum or whatever. Because
Yeah,
he
absolutely. Or at least make a practice squad.
yeah, he looked, I mean, and he was playing with the 2s and the 3s, and, like, I thought he looked phenomenal, and then I wrote down the Dak OC, if that's the kind of concepts we're gonna use during the season, I love it. I wrote down, the cross concepts with the passing,
Mm-hmm.
in that, stretching the field with routes outside of straight lines up the field. You can
Yep.
throw a 40-yard pass and, like what Jordy Nelson used to catch with Aaron Rodgers. Hence, this concept is not everything has to be a straight route to go deep. And
Yep.
so, and then one thing I've been saying a lot of it, not to take all the talking points, but just using the running back in the pass game and getting someone who's athletic out there against a linebacker or a safety, or for that matter, a bigger guy like Lepke on a cornerback, to where
Mhm.
takes more than one person to tackle him, and that's how they've scored 4 or 5 touchdowns this preseason. Is get down there and get close in the red zone or even closer, and dump it off on a swing pass and to be like, hey, go be athletic. And I kind of like that concept. But what did you see? What did you see in this last game, or any other specifics?
Well, to build off of what you said, I would like to talk a little bit about Hunter Lepke. So my time spent in the same division, give a little background. Sam Houston State, I would compare us to like the Ohio State of the big leagues, the FBS of college football. So where Hunter Lepke played, just as a background, he played at North Dakota State, which is considered the Bama.
Yeah.
So I've my time there, I only played for 2 years, but I roomed with guys. I roomed with the starting quarterback there, and he was my best friend forever. So I was constantly asking and going to games, and so I was still very involved in football. So
Yeah.
the thing with Hunter Lepke is I've watched him 2 or 3 years now. The first 2 years that he was in college, he absolutely destroyed our defense. He ran for so many yards, and they deemed him at North Dakota State the majestic beast. And the reason they call him that is because, I mean, you watched him in the game in week 3. He's huge. He's a big guy. He probably weighs 250 pounds, but he's got incredible feet. So he was known for, just kind of popping out of holes that it would look like Deuce Vaughn. You'd be like, how in the world is this 250-pound guy, popping out of the hole behind a guard like that and getting 8 yards? So, I mean, I've been a big advocate for him to be on the roster just because what they lost in Zeke, I really think they can get for very cheap from lefties. And I'm not talking about the flash or anything like that. I'm talking about Zeke's 2022 and 2021 season. You had Pollard, the gasher, and now you've got Zeke who's out that would get you the 2 or 3 yards. Well, Lefty can be that guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what I liked about it. And then to add on to what you're saying about the concepts, that was the main thing I said from Dak being the OC. I love what I saw out of it because the versatility in the game was very evident to what we haven't had in the past. I saw a lot of play actions, a lot of rollouts, something that we didn't see from Kellen Moore. And I think that gets me even more excited for Dak because, as we've been saying, you're taking away his strongest attribute. He's one of the best on-the-run throwers in the NFL, and the stats prove it. And when you don't let your quarterback be mobile and he's just taking the same snap behind the same 5 linemen all game, that just takes away a lot of that makes the defense's strategy simpler because now all they have to do is blitz you every time. And then if you're just sending guys on vertical routes, like you said, Dak doesn't have those opportunities. That's why we were running curl routes on 3rd and 10 with Kellen, is because we're just doing 5-step drop back.
Yeah.
So I love to see that. That was huge for me. That's something that I've been looking for Dallas doing, is because when you get in RPOs to roll out, passing on running downs, that was the other thing I had. That's huge. And, and I'm going to call them this for this podcast because when we get to the Trey Lance trade, it's, unloading the clip. But geriatric Jerry, after the game, is bitching and whining about the fact that, I don't like that Dak's calling passing plays on 3rd and 1. It's like, okay, well, we scored 35 points.
Yeah.
And our 3rd down conversion was like 75%.
Yeah.
Boo-hoo.
And also to add to your point, it's like, what have we all talked about this break about getting better on the offense? The receivers. We got better on receivers. Why not use your strongest assets? If we're going to say, CeeDee Lamb's a top dude, Brandon Cooks has put up 1,000-yard receivers with me and you throwing the football to him. Michael Gallup, who can be that dude, and we've seen it, and now that, he has a healthy leg. And then obviously you've got Brooks and Turpin and Ferguson and Hendershot. You've got these dudes that you can throw to and run these different concepts and leveling systems and cross routes. Why would we not throw the ball more? Right? I mean, if you've got all these athletic dudes, get them in space to make athletic plays and maybe not be so, like, just because we pass it, and we've talked about this before, you and me specifically, it's just because we pass it doesn't mean it has to be, a 35-yard post route or something crazy. Like, that's like what we talked with Hunter Lepke, is like, if we throw something and he can get 4 yards, well, he's not running into the biggest guys on the field and we're still getting positive yards. So I don't understand. I'm with you with the geriatric Jerry, the very just super old head mindset of like, you gotta establish a run, like, obviously, but you don't have to do it the same way we did in 1993.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess what I would say, or just one last thing on that, is like, it's a flip of the coin. Old people say establishing the run to establish the pass, but you can flip that. I mean, that's tails, but heads is establishing a pass creates runs.
Yeah.
And so when you have a defense guessing on 3rd and 1, I mean, if I asked you right now, 3rd and 1 last year, what are we doing?
Oh, we're handing it straight up the middle.
To who?
Zeke.
How many tight ends on the field?
As many as we could fit on the field.
Exactly. Every time it's a 3rd and 1 or a 3rd and 3 or something that were 3 yards or less. It was 31 personnel. Throw CeeDee Lamb out on the numbers. Put Dak under center. Put Zeke in the backfield. Turn around and handle the ball and hope that we get 1 or 2 yards.
Yeah.
It's the same thing every time. And every time the defense would line up having 10 guys in the box because they knew we were going to run football. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Connor McGovern at fullback, like, or whoever, like.
Yeah, exactly. It was the same thing every time. So I like seeing something different, something that's going to, play to our quarterback's strength. And
Yeah.
the last thing I'll say, a 4-yard run is just as good as a 4-yard, flat pass.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that's very positive for the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Now we'll move into what I think you don't think is very positive for the Cowboys, contrary to what a lot of people think, and that would be the Trey Lance trade. And because I said I'm going to load the clip, I'll let you go first on that one.
All right. Well, I'll keep it short and quick and less negative or less unloading of the clipish. That way you can do all that. But yeah, trading Trey Lance. We'll do good cop, bad cop. I'll do the good cop part. You can do the good bad cop. So we traded for Trey Lance who was a former 1st round pick. We gave him a 4th round pick, so nothing crazy. In 2023, he will make $940,000. Not crazy. Okay. In 2024, he will make 1.05 million. Okay. To end my segment, the only positive I can see out of it is that basically we could get rid of Cooper Rush next year and save about $1.5 million and still have someone who can just light it up in the preseason, and when we flip them for a 2nd round pick, and then go get Will Grier. So that's all I got to say about it, and I'll let you unload the clip.
Well, I think that's the positive here. It's a 1st round quarterback for a 4th round pick that's cheap. But here's the problem: is if you turn on your TV today on ESPN or SportsCenter, what is everybody talking about?
Trey Lance and
Trey
the
Lance.
Dallas Cowboys.
Who's on the hot seat? Dak Prescott. Okay, that's funny. You know how much money they're going to have to spend to get rid of our boy next year?
Yep.
If they were to try. I think you pointed this out.
I think it's like
$65 million, and they're going to have to cut through his no trade clause. Yeah. Okay. What this is again, geriatric Jerry basically saying, hey, I'm bored. Look, here's a shiny object. Let's go trade for him. And we've had a very quiet, very productive offseason. I mean, we like what we've been talking about. They went out and got the receivers. They went and strengthened the cornerback spot. They actually drafted a defensive tackle in the middle that's going to swallow people. They had a solid draft. They had a pretty quiet offseason besides Zach Martin. They got that figured out pretty quickly. I mean, it was a very quiet, very productive offseason. You get to preseason game 3, and you just decide, hey, I'm going to stir the pot. And, I mean, you saw Dak's response to that. He's like, and Coach McCarthy. They both had zero clue this was going on.
Yeah.
So you have Dak sitting there in front of reporters being like, I never heard anything about this. Like, he basically said, I've been on this team for 8 years, and, I'm just used to it at this point. So the point I made is like they did the same crap during his contract franchise tag propaganda. They basically told him, we're not going to pay you anything. We'll go pay your boy Zeke while he gets fat, but we won't pay you, and you're going to have to prove it. And that was Dak's best year. He snapped his ankle, I think, the year after that, after they paid him. Or was it the other way around?
He balled out and then snapped his ankle, but he was like 5 games in and was on like record-setting pace, and then they paid him
7,000 yards.
Yeah.
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 So basically, to me, like to kind of wrap up what this means for Dak, excuse me, and what it means for Trey Lance, it effectively, besides, and this is the whole point of the show, is to give you the unscripted agenda take. This means nothing for Dak. He could go out next year, and I'm not only saying that. Stephen Jones, Jerry's son, also said it means nothing for Dak. And contrary to what the media is going to tell you, Dak is their guy. And, you can argue that one way or the other. Obviously, we're on one side of the fence, but, you can't, you just can't chalk it up to anything. Trey Lance couldn't make it in the most quarterback efficient offense in the NFL. I mean, they're the one offense in the NFL where they've been able to throw anybody in that offense, and it works. I mean, they threw a white boy from Iowa State in that offense and almost beat the Eagles if he didn't tear his shoulder. They beat us with him, and he was rattled in our game. But that's the whole point, is they couldn't make it work with him.
They were making it work with Josh Johnson or whatever, who had been on their team for 7 minutes until he had a concussion.
Yeah, and on top of that, Sam Darnold looks like a good quarterback in that. And I'll argue that Sam Darnold kind of got a bad rap in the NFL, but he's good. So Trey Lance can't make it work.
Exactly.
I don't know. So to wrap that up, I'm like, what do you want me to, like? I've got all my friends who will text me. It's like, what do you want me to say? Do you want me to be like, oh, he's on the hot seat? It's like, he's on the hot seat every year because he's Dallas' quarterback.
Absolutely.
So, anyway. All righty. Well, I'll let that would be the last bullet I throw on Trey Lance. So we will move into our Mamas Don't Let Your Cowboys. And, I think this is a good one for us to be on, seeing as we're done with the preseason. We've seen the cuts. I guess we'll go back to that real quick. What did you like about the cuts? What did you not like about the cuts? We were talking a little bit about what we saw and what we didn't like with those cuts. So what did you see?
Yeah, I have about 10 names written down and whatnot. Jalen Brooks, a receiver, he ended up making it, so I think that's pretty cool. The Asim Richards guy, the one O-line pick that the Cowboys had this year that everybody just forgot about. Because I'm pretty sure we went over it on the podcast before we all rebranded and whatnot. And I think we all left them off of our draft board, and we're like, oh shit. And so he actually, I think I read a stat, or one of us sent a stat, that he actually graded at like an 88.7 or something on PFF. So that's pretty cool. Schoonmaker made it. Obviously, we all have our opinion on that. But every time I watch him, he looks like Dalton Schultz. So we're
even wears 86.
Yeah, and he moves and catches and finds the 5-yard out curl route and finds that and falls down just as good as him, which those people are good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying anything's wrong with them, but we have two better ones, but we'll see what happens first year. Okay. So the Harper guy that Dan Quinn said he was going to try to implement in there as the DeMarion Overshown replacement. Two other guys that I think are big time to mention is Jordan Lewis is not getting put on the PUP list. Okay, the physically unable to perform list. He made the roster. And then weird name, but the Wanye Thomas guy. After that first game where they played the Jaguars and I saw him intercept that ball, and I just started I was like, man, this guy's kind of flying around and he's wearing like number 30. And I know they can wear whatever number, but I was like, he's kind of big. Like he's not like a little dude. No one looked at him, and like his intangibles are kind of off the charts. And so like he's pretty quick, 4'5", 4'6" guy, 6'2", 6'3", 200 plus pounds. Like I think he's going to be someone that slides into that overshown role as well, that can kind of drop down and make a tackle or fall back in coverage and not look like a fool and hold his own. So I think that's a big name, or that's a name that I think is going to be bigger this year. And I think it's going to be similar to like a Deron Bland, where we didn't really know who he was, and then all of a sudden it's like, yo, this guy can play. And
Yep.
so those are kind of just the names I wrote down. What about you? What you got?
I'll make mine short and sweet. I didn't really love the Jabril Cox cut
Yeah,
just because of what's happened with Overshone. I really feel like he's a good special teams guy and a good linebacker to have on the team. But I mean, they gave him a bunch of effort, or they gave him a bunch of opportunities, especially with the ACL tear. And I just don't think he was making a big difference
yeah.
that they'd like to see. So I mean, I get it. Dennis Houston's gone. That's great. Malik Davis being gone, I was kind of shocked by that one. But there, the one thing I noticed today, and what you see on this roster, is think about how many draft picks are wasted here. I'm just going to name off who Dallas drafted in late rounds and who's getting cut here. So Jabril Cox, that's one. They drafted Malik Davis, I'm pretty sure. Sean McKean, the tight end, he's gone. Quentin Bohanna,
Hmm.
that was a recent draft pick from UCLA. He can't even make the team.
Yep.
Let's see. Matt Farniok, or however you say his last name. I
Yeah.
think they had him. And then Simi Fehoko, where I think we're all good about that. Thank
Bro,
God. What a
I,
waste.
I think we can all, and I'll admit it. I was on the Fehoko bandwagon. I'm like, dude, you're 6'4", you're running a 4.3. You just got to run somewhere. Just run somewhere. And
Yeah.
like Kellen Moore's offense should have been the gold mine for him of just running straight and we'll throw it deep to you. And it didn't click. So I'm over the Fehoko bandwagon. Like you said, just 6'3", 6'4", 4.3 speed. And
Mhm.
like, come on.
And you just consistently see him dropping balls in training camp.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you can't put it anywhere better than right here in the numbers, and you can't catch.
Yeah. Tough.
So all that to say, you know, I'm very, I don't know, I feel bad for the guys that get cut, but that is the NFL, that is business. Doug Peterson of the Jags coach, he had to cut his son today.
Yeah, I
And
thought that
that's
was
tough.
nuts. Yeah.
So, having a brother-in-law in the NFL, it kind of hits
Yeah.
different when you're like, hey, like these guys are real. And it's like, I can sit here and say that about Fehoko, but, I, now that I'm seeing it firsthand, I said all
Yeah.
that. I'm like, hey, honestly, it does suck, but that is the way of the NFL. So, all right, well, we'll roll right into our Mamas Don't Like Your Cowboys. I'll let you go first.
All right. So mine is Mamas Don't Let Your Cowboys Create More Unnecessary Drama. And in quotations, I have geriatric Jerry. So
There you go.
let's not Steven, let's step in a second and give the old man his scotch and tell him to calm down, and you just make a little more rational decision, and maybe talk to the head coach or whatever once or twice. But
Pat him on
that's the
the back
biggest
and
thing.
tell him you're done.
Yeah. I don't know what he could do, but to make more drama, but just don't.
I think that's a good point. Mine is kind of wrapping up the preseason, just looking around the league, and I think mine rolls right into the storyline behind Dallas, which is Mamas don't let your Cowboys ruin this opportunity. There's a major weak point in the NFC. I would say your top three teams, the Cowboys, Eagles, and 49ers, everything below that is arguable. Our roster is primed and offense is looking good. They finally have some good talent. I mean, you got Parsons, Lawrence, hopefully Mozzie Smith on the front line. Bunch of linebackers, a solidified Probably the best secondary I've seen Dallas have since I've been alive. And then the offense, we spoke about enough about the offense. And then some bright spots in the preseason. I mean, Akeem Richards, he played really well in the preseason. Deuce Vaughn, everybody's talking about him.
Yeah.
Marquise Bell, that's the guy that's going to step up for Overshone, and I really liked what I've seen out of him too. And then one that nobody's really talking about, but since I have a soft spot for O lineman, TJ Bass,
Yeah.
undrafted free agent from Oregon, and he made the team. I mean, he kicked Farniok, the guy I mentioned earlier, off the team, and I think that's huge. So a lot of bright spots for the Cowboys. Just don't ruin this opportunity, or at least make something out of it. NFC Championship game, something along those lines. So obviously, we always hope for the best, but I'm not going to say Super Bowl because I'm not going to be that Dallas fan. But you know, I think they have a good shot this year, and I don't really say that often. So that is our Mamas Don't Like Your Cowboys, or as my favorite country music singer says it, Mamas Don't Let Your Cowboys grow up to be babies. And I think that's
There we go.
me and Jacob are saying right there. So, all right, we'll move into our TRAK insights, or as me and Jacob are calling it this time around, the 2-minute drill.
Yeah, Dr. Quinn and Medicine Woman. Let's go. Oh.
All righty. Jacob, I'll let you start this one off again.
All right. So I'm going to start off. The first one is a baseball injury. I'm sure we've all seen it because it's the best player in MLB right now. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Shohei Ohtani tore his UCL, and he's still out there playing with it or without it, I guess, attached, and he's still dropping bombs. So that's just one big one because he's essentially the face of baseball, whether it be in the United States or in another country. Like everybody knows who he is right now. Now, that's for baseball. If we're going to go into football, we're going to have to do this one pretty quickly. So the 2 minutes. So we got Kyler Murray with the ACL, right? He's not going to play for at least until week 5, right? Another one that popped up, that was a surprising one. I think it popped up yesterday or today. Von Miller with an ACL for the Bills. He is on the PUP list as well. Okay. Won't be able to play until at least week 5. Won't even be able to be on the field. Okay. Joe Burrow, I think everybody kind of forgot it, but he had a calf strain over the summer, right? Those aren't fun to play with. Okay. And rule of thumb being an athletic trainer is like when you're dealing with a calf strain or an Achilles strain is once you start feeling good, at least give it 1 to 2 weeks more before you do anything. Because that thing goes, that Achilles goes. Okay. And you're back to square one. Another one that we kind of have history with is Lyle Collins. Okay. ACL in week 16 last year. Definitely unfortunate, but it just seems like a guy just cannot stay healthy. For all you fantasy football people right here, we've got Jerry Jeudy with a hamstring. Those soft tissue injuries on a fast guy are not fun. Okay. Jonathan Taylor with a quote unquote ankle injury. He's on the PUP list. More like he's butt hurt. And then Davon A-Chain. Yeah. Davon A-Chain shoulder. Okay. Running backs, right? You got to get in there and get nasty with it. Pause. He's questionable week to week, but I mean, if you get hit the wrong way, right, you're back to square one. Okay. Jalen Ramsey had what's called a meniscus repair. And so what they do, instead of shaving the meniscus down, they suture it. Takes a much longer time to recover. There's actually questions out there that he'll be out for a majority of the season. So that's a big loss. And I was just going through just some of these are interesting. TJ Hawkinson back, which is questionable. Back injuries are tough. Brees Hall, they just got Dalvin Cook, so you kind of know where. I think you brought this up. It was a good point. You know where they stand on his ACL if the Jets went and got Dalvin Cook.
Right. That's why I've taken away from him in my fantasy league.
Absolutely. And then JSN had a fractured wrist in like one of the first preseason games. One that we brought up in the group, Ryan Jensen. Okay. He had a knee injury. He's on the long term, or what hockey calls long term IR. And just doesn't look good for him or his career. Dude tried to make it back from ACL surgery in like 3 months to play in the playoffs. It's a tough story for this guy because what probably happened is he's probably got some type of cartilage damage or something like that, because ACLs in the NFL are like a 99% recovery rate or something like that, as long as you do your rehab right. So if he's come back too early and messed up something in the capsule of that knee, that's hard to come back from. And then the last two, they're in the division. Terry McLaurin with a toe injury, he's doubtful for week 1. And playing an explosive position and whatnot, that's tough. Like everything else, it could go back to square one real quick, or it could get stepped on, and then all of a sudden you're crying on the ground. Last one, because I feel like we haven't talked about him or seen him for the last 3 to 4 years. Chase Young went to the doctor today for a neck injury, had a stinger over the summer, and they're trying to make sure he is 1,000% ready to go, because he's played about 30 minutes since he got drafted overall, number 1 overall from the Washington. So that's my 2-minute drill. What you got, Ryan?
Well, building off that Chase Young, they're trying to make sure he's okay, because they're like, hey, look, man, that neck needs to be good so we can trade you for some good draft picks. So, well,
absolutely.
That was a great 2-minute drill. Mine's a little bit different because I don't have any stats to share at the moment. We're a couple weeks away from football, and that's my specialty. So mine was a little bit different. But to start off, Trump indictment. He's had 4 indictments. That's tough. JT trade rumors. Where is he going? Mystery team. Well, we found out today that he's going nowhere. That was a big hoorah for nothing. And as Jacob pointed out earlier, he's crying on the sidelines as we speak. The other thing I'd like to add is Kelvin Joseph getting traded a mid-corner for a mid-corner for Dallas. It made no sense. That's another second-round draft pick that has gone to waste for Dallas. Other than that, I think something that not a lot of people paid attention to, and it kind of hit me from the side, was the college football time clock change. Were you aware of that?
Yeah, I did see that. One of my coworkers mentioned it to me, and I was like, wait, the clock doesn't stop?
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah. I'm like, dude, that changes everything.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. So the time clock in the college football in years past, it stops on first downs, and then ref gets the ball, resets the ball, clock starts when the chains move. So now what's going on is college football has changed that to match the NFL. When you get a first down, clock doesn't stop unless you go out of bounds. But in the last 2 minutes of the first and second half, the clock stops again. So, that's going to take away from your wild Big 12 crazy games that were, 57 to 56 or whatever, allowing teams to play it out, battle it out. I actually really liked it because it made for some really wild offenses.
Yeah.
Like you're probably never going to see an Oregon-style offense for 2014 again. But in the future, for my 2-minute drill, I will be sharing stats, what I like matchup-wise and fantasy, maybe even that. But yeah, as you saw, Jacobs was very injury-driven. He, the medical guy, and me being the analyst, I will be giving you your stat updates and giving you some passing leaders throughout the season, something along those lines. I just don't have a lot to give you right now, other than Will Greer is apparently the new Patrick Mahomes of the preseason game. So there you have it.
Yeah, throw those stats up on the board, man. Let's look at
that was crazy. But I think talking about the college football time clock, I think that leads right into our next segment about, what's going on in college football right now in terms of realignment. So I'm going to put this on the board because I think this is what everybody's talking about, and that would be bye-bye Pac-12. It doesn't exist anymore. So talking college football here, I'll set you up, Jacob. You've got the SEC is getting UT and OU in 2025. There's going to be a lot of realignment there. The Big Ten's adding teams. Pac-12 is having to move teams. They basically don't exist anymore. I think there's 2 or 3 teams that are still alive in that conference. But, everybody left. Everybody's leaving for the Big 12. Got teams that are looking for a home in 2 to 3 weeks. that they're trying to find a schedule to play. And I'll let Jacob answer, but I'll give you the college athlete take, and he can too as well. He's a college athlete, baseball player. Come on now.
Yeah, there you go.
Basically, Jacob, what I want you to give your take on is, as a college football or college football fan, that one of the great things about having all these conferences is you saw a lot of common rivals play each other, and you're getting some of that back in the SEC and some in the Big 12. But this realignment, what does it mean going forward for college football? And then is the Pac-12 going to make it out of it? Are they going to exist anymore? Are they going to pull some teams up from, maybe American Conference, something along that? What are your thoughts?
Well, for the college football part of it is, and the big thing is that not many of us saw this big of a realignment growing up, and so we're not used to it. But it's
Mm-hmm.
happened plenty of times in the past. However, what it seems like it's alluding to is that there's going to be one big ass conference of the best teams, and then there's going to be a bunch of other conferences of the second tier teams. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, we didn't have to spell it out for you, but the SEC is kind of that big conference outside of what, three teams, and that's, I mean, yeah, you're gonna have your USCs and your Penn States and stuff like that. But the last few years, it's been Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, Michigan, and then every now and then you have on your 6 through 7 or 6 through 8, you'll have a USC and a TCU that somehow sneaks in. Um, and so that's just what it's looking like, is you're going to have all these good teams in one conference called the SEC, and then you're going to have and eventually I would assume Ohio State and Clemson, because Clemson's essentially over there next to everything else in the SEC. It just wouldn't surprise me if they all just joined the SEC, and then the SEC booted like Vanderbilt or something like that in Kentucky. And
Yeah,
so, that's just what it kind of looks like it's alluding to, is you're going to have one superior conference, and then just like we rank things on tiers, you're going to have tier 1 SEC, tier 2 whatever else, tier 3 kind of thing.
yeah,
Because it just ends up being the same thing every year.
yeah. I'll give you some insider trading info.
Uh,
Spent my time, like I said earlier, at Sam Houston State, and my team was, like I said, it was in the FCS, so we were D1 Delta.
yeah,
A lot of word came down from like our ADs and stuff that Sam Houston State, like you being a lumberjack, we've been on the cusp of the FCS, one of the top teams for a long time, and there's all this movement going on. You've got teams moving to the SEC, teams moving to the Big Ten, but what not a lot of people are thinking about is of American conferences, like U of H moved to the Big 12, and
yeah,
teams like that have been smaller conferences with a big platform are moving up and taking the spots of, like, it's kind of like TCU when they moved from the Mountain West to the Big 12. Somebody's got to take that spot, right?
yeah.
So what I was told years ago, Sam Houston is now in the American Conference. I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
they took the
I think
spot of.
I think they're in it this year. They get in it next year. But I was looking a little bit
They're
at
in
it
it this
too, and
year.
okay, cool.
Yeah. So essentially, what I was told years ago is Sam Houston, gathered with a couple of other teams in the FCS and had a conversation about, look, guys, with all of this money and all what's going on, and this is just the view of a small team, but like with all of this going on with the big team, somebody's got to fill those gaps. And what this is going to turn into is kind of what you're alluding to. It won't be one big conference in the SEC, but it's going to be kind of like the NFL style, and they just need to get it over with. But it needs to move to the NFC and the AFC, and what that's going to be is the Big Ten and the SEC.
Yeah,
So you're going to have 16 Big Ten teams and 16 SEC teams, and they'll battle it out just like you would in the NFL. So what that leaves you is, like, it used to be the FBS, the FCS, D2, D3, NAIA. What
Yeah.
that's going to happen is, and what Sam's voice to all the players was, the FCS is going to go away. And if you don't make that jump into that conference, into those American conferences, into the Mountain West, the small cap conferences, then the jump will never be there again. So Sam kind of put their hand on the table or on the cutting board and was like, we got to make the jump now or we're never going to be able to do the jump they want to make.
Yeah.
So one team that didn't do that is North Dakota State. They decided to stay in the FCS, and a couple other teams. But Sam decided to make that jump, and what this is turning into is that they think that the FCS is going to go away. You're going to have Big Ten, SEC playing it out, and then everybody else is going to be playing kind of like how the FCS is set up, where you're playing in the playoffs and you play like a 32-team playoff.
Yeah.
So I think that would be interesting. I think it would be fun. That will take away the UCF playing, or for lack of better terms, bitching about being undefeated and wanting to play Bama. Like, you don't want to play Bama.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I 100% agree with you, and I think everybody, because every sport and division does it that way, except FBS college football. JUCO does it, NAI, D3, FCS, hell,
Right.
NFL, MLB, like all these sports do it, and then there's college football who's like, no, we're just gonna have a bunch of random ass bowl games and take the winners from the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, and we're gonna stick them in a bowl, and they're the champions. It's like,
we're gonna put LSU and Virginia in the Tostitos Nacho Bowl that's played in the middle of Birmingham, Alabama, and watch LSU beat the shit out of Virginia.
Absolutely. And then everybody gets upset to where we're gonna move to more teams in this, and it's like, just go ahead and make obviously you don't want to make it probably 32 because then Alabama or Georgia or whatever is going to end up playing like San Jose State and actually murdering a person on the field. But like if you did a top 12 or a top 14, like I think those would be pretty fair games. Obviously you're going to have your people that are going to be off that day or whatever and just get their ass kicked. But at the same time, like, if everybody really wants Bama or wants Georgia, like they'll have their shot.
Yep. Yeah, and I think the one last thing, and the reason I named this 5x Pac-12, and I feel like you can speak to this too, what it's changing and what not a lot of people are understanding is, like, if you have a team like Oregon that's joining the ACC, that's a Pacific Coast Conference playing an Atlantic Coast team. Sorry, flip that. And that team is going to have to travel every weekend from Oregon to, Florida State. So let me just put it this way. That works in football. Sure, that's a lot of traveling. But, you work other sports than football as a athletic trainer. So let's just say you're working basketball, and now you've got to travel every freaking road game across the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, that takes a huge toll on a lot of other programs at these schools. And I think that's the point that I like a lot of, I think Jim Harbaugh, is Jim Harbaugh the one in Baltimore, or which one's the brother that's,
you could just say Harbaugh. I think it's John Harbaugh
that
is at Michigan.
He's spoken up about that, about how, you can't just keep taking these teams and, the baseball team's got to play somebody close or whatever. So, as an athletic trainer guy, I'm sure you can speak to the travel ball a little bit more.
Yeah, and I mean, you brought up a good point, like with baseball, where football plays what? If you win everything, you play 14 games a year, right? A collegiate baseball or softball team is going to play close to 60. Like, and I mean, excellent points you brought up. If Oregon softball has to play Florida State softball, vice versa, either place, like, bro, that takes a toll on the body. And to come from more of a business standpoint, that's a lot of freaking money
Mm-hmm.
because you're not taking a Greyhound. They ain't taking no yellow dogs down there. Like they're
Dropping
having
in
to,
a jet, baby.
yeah, they're flying, and
Mhm.
you know and it's not like these teams only play like one plays in the fall, one plays in the spring. Like softball, baseball play at the same time. Basketball overlaps with some of that. Your tennis teams, your volleyball teams. It's like, I mean, it just like I feel like it got so narrow sided with football. It's like, yo, you've got what do these other teams do? Do they just not join the? They just all become independent within their own team, or what do they do? Because that would just be awful. Not only as an athletic trainer from this side of it, but as an athlete, that would be tough. Like you would, I mean, if you think about it, right? Like you said, Oregon plays Florida State on a Saturday. Well, that's two totally different climates. So you're going to want to leave at least 3 days before you get there to acclimate to it, right? So that would have you leaving on a Tuesday, hopefully getting there on a Wednesday and playing on a Saturday.
Yep.
Like that's nuts to me. Like not even D1 could handle that. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, and to like add on to that too, it's like the reason they did all this is because football programs make the most money, so they're not really. I don't feel like they're taking. They're worried about TV deals. They're worried about what's going to generate the most money. That's why UT and Oklahoma are moving into the SEC. That's why A&M did it a couple years ago. They're worried about making the most money, but I don't think they're really worried about other teams that are going to have to go through all the pain and struggle that you just described. I mean, that's tough. So
Yeah.
a lot to look out for on the college football forefront, but it's back. Games week 0 just happened. Week 1's coming up, so full
Go
slate of
Apache. Go
football is
Apaches. Go Apaches.
that's right. Eat 'em up, cats, and
There we go.
get these from my brothers. But other than that, I think that's our college football slate. So
Yeah.
we'll wrap this thing up here with our track record of the week. And I've let Jacob go a couple times here. So I will shoot us off first. And this is the big thing for me. I'm still 105 degrees outside, which sucks, but there's a whiff in the air. And what that whiff is deer season
There we
right
go.
around the corner. And me and my buddies all the time during deer season are always playing 90s country music. That is my go-to near the fire. So one of my favorites is Tracy Lawrence, Time Marches On.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
is
there we go. Sister
a
cries out from
beer
her baby bed. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's a phenomenal song, dude. And it's funny that you say that. I didn't pick that as my track record, so don't worry about that.
oh, thank God.
But but that was actually, hopefully our parents aren't listening to this too much, but that's what me and all my buddies from UT Tyler and everything, we all listened to all of that, and we'd go out to the dance hall and just request it, and then get out on the middle of the floor, beer in
Heck
hand,
yeah.
arms around each other, just back and forth, just drunk as hell, screaming it.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's a phenomenal, phenomenal song.
All
And
mine were all my memories were one of my best friends had a really big ranch. We'd go out there and drink and try and go shoot hogs, and that was always on the playlist, always. So a lot of good memories to that song. Anytime I hear it, because I'm still a big '90s country fan. Anytime I hear it, it just brings me back. So that is my track record of the week.
nice. Well, my track record is not doesn't have anything to do with songs. It actually has to do with a person. So we talked about it in the beginning of the podcast with baseball. Jose Altuve yesterday recorded the first cycle, so home run, triple, double, single of his career against the Red Sox last night. And what was crazy enough is that the Astros were beating the shit out of the Red Sox so bad that when he hit the home run to get the cycle, I was like, "Oh, nice, a home run," and like didn't think anything about it because they were up by like 10. And the commentator comes on just like, and Jose Altuve does it for the cycle. Blah, blah. And I was like, oh, damn. I was like, he did. And so just to pack it on with that, a dude that took so much scrutiny during the cheating scandal and literally got up there and said like, hey, this is my team, my fault, even though the statistics came out and said that he didn't use it and actually told his teammates, don't effing do that when I am up to bat, yada yada. And for him to just, even after that, he hit before, he hit during, and then he's just still out there just proving everybody wrong and just putting his nuts on top of everybody's head right now and doing stuff like that is just awesome to see. I mean, he was with the Astros when they were, losing those, 100 plus games for 3 years in a row, won the World Series, got caught cheating, came back and said, screw y'all. We won again in 2022. And then, for him to do all those things, and then this is his first ever cycle, I think it was pretty cool. And he did it. He hit the single, double, triple, and then to get the cycle, he hit a tank over the Green Monster in Fenway. So I think that's a pretty cool spot to do it as well. So
Yeah,
that's
that is
my
pretty.
that's my track record for the week.
I like the mix up. That's a great record right there. Something
Yeah,
not a song, but that is a perfect way to end this podcast. The way we begun.
absolutely.
So, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us. But, as always, follow the guys on social media. TRAK Pod, TRAK.pod. Make sure you catch it on Spotify. You can watch us live on YouTube. Jared the Rook is always active on Twitter, handling people that are illogical about Dak or calling biased Cowboys fans out. That's always fun to watch. Good comedy every day when you're at the office and you just hop on the X. But they're active, man. They're active on Instagram. They're active on Twitter, and as always, they're sharing podcasts every week and working hard. So for me and Jacob, we get to sit back and contribute sometimes, and then sometimes, like we said at the beginning, we get a little bit on the reins. We're going to take control.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna teach you a thing or two, and not just let these little children come in here and talk bad on people like
That's right.
like our like our guy Dakota Rain Prescott. That's a knock at Hunter, the kid, for all that. So, but yeah, it's definitely fun to get out here and talk some shop, go over some cool things. Like I said with the college football stuff, like going back and just looking at those games and remembering them as a little kid. It's a pretty cool thing to think about. I mean, I'm getting older now, so it's like it's pretty cool remembering when you were 12 years old at your buddy's house watching on a big ass TV with a box, 3 feet behind it, watching Vince Young run out and whoop, whoop, for a Rose Bowl champion. So it was pretty cool talking about all that, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of good memories in place from childhood. So, all right, well, we're gonna end this one out, and I guess virtually hand the reins back over to Jared and Hunter, the Rook and the Kid, the next week. But shout outs from the analyst and the medical guy. We will be catching y'all during this football season. So that will be a wrap. Any final words, Jacob?
Just go Apaches. Football season's here. Hunting season's coming up. Let's go, baby.
That's right. All right. TRAK Pod, follow them on.
All right. Take it easy, guys.